Okay, so last time I did the protein pancakes and a lot of people really liked them and I got some really good feedback from you. So well done for all those people that had a go. If you haven't, have a look back on that last video. Now, today we're going to do something a little bit more involved, a savoury meal. And we're going to do turkey burgers, all right? And this one actually Mr. Jones gave to me. So this credit goes to Mr. Jones here. Now, ingredients, first of all, equipment that you're going to need. Chopping board, knife, be careful with the knife, make sure your parents are aware. Spatula, tablespoon, teaspoon. I've measured all mine out, but I just got these out just to show you. You need a tablespoon and a teaspoon. Now a tablespoon really is slightly bigger than the dessert spoon you have on the table. Okay. You'll need a bowl, a mixing bowl. I've got a glass Pyrex bowl there. And your frying pan as well. All right. Ingredients you're going to need, and these hopefully I'll make sure these come up on the screen for you. So you need 500 grams of turkey mince. 500 grams of turkey mince. You need a handful of fresh mint, a handful of chopped coriander, a teaspoon, hence the reason you need your teaspoon, a teaspoon of chopped garlic. That's about a clove. You might want to put a clove and a half in depending on your taste. You're going to need some Worcester sauce. You're going to need some coconut oil. And one way I like to get veggies in, a handful of spinach, okay? And that will go into our burgers in a minute. Now the great thing with these is you can add things to them if you like. Sometimes I put pine nuts in them. I like chilli in mine, but the kids and my wife don't, so I'll leave out the chilli and I'll add that a little bit later on. And the other thing you will need actually is just some salt and pepper to season. And again, the amount of salt and pepper that you use depends on your taste, something you need to have a go at. You shouldn't really need to add too much. So without further ado, let's get going. So you need your mixing jug ready, and get your mince out and leave it at room temperature. It's important for all meat that you cook. Make sure you bring it up to room temperature before you cook it. Okay. Now, basically all this ingredients is going to go in here. We're going to mash it up. We're going to make burgers. It's a really simple process, and there's no exact science to it. You just got to have a go. Okay. So my chopped garlic. Now, if you're using cloves of garlic, probably 1 to 1.5 maybe cloves of garlic to 500 grams of mince. I've cheated a little bit. I've got frozen, fresh but frozen garlic, and that will go in there. That's a teaspoon. Like I say, it's a clove and a half, depending on the size. Okay. Again, I've cheated slightly with the coriander because I couldn't get any fresh this week. So I've got fresh but frozen coriander. Don't use dry coriander, it doesn't quite have the same taste. Now, because of this, this is about a tablespoon's worth. If it was fresh, I'd have slightly less. When you freeze it, you do seem to lose some of the taste. So that's about a tablespoon of frozen, or a good bunch of fresh. If you get fresh from the shop, just make sure you get a good bunch of it. Okay, and you can use slightly less. Again, mint. I've got some mint growing over in the corner, so a good bunch of that. I probably want slightly more of this. Okay, and with my mint, I'm just going to chop it up using my fingernails as a guide. Be very careful. Never put your fingers underneath the knife. So good handful of mint that goes in. Doesn't have to be too finely chopped, but get it relatively finely chopped. Okay, that in. Again, you can use frozen spinach, frozen chopped spinach. I wouldn't use frozen wholly spinach. Frozen chopped spinach is just as good. And a cube of that, they come generally in cubes. Get that cube out, allow that to defrost, and then just whack that cube in. That's perfect. Otherwise, got some fresh spinach here, just a big handful. Okay, So bunch that up into a handful. Bunch that handful up into a bunch, okay? And with my knife, using the end of the knife, keep that on the table, keeping my fingers out the way of the blade. I'm just going to chop that spinach up. And this I want fairly fine, because I don't want the kids later on moaning at me that they got massive bits of spinach. You can't, there's not that much taste to this spinach through it, but you're getting all those vitamins out of it. So just make sure, get parents to help if you need to. Just chop that spinach up quite finely. And what was a big handful, once you've chopped it up, will be slightly less. Okay, so this just gets your veggies in, gets those minerals in, like I've said. There's not loads of taste to it, but it's all good for you. That's what we're all about here. Okay, now Worcester sauce, a couple of glugs of Worcester sauce. Get that in there, okay? It's pretty much it, it's as simple as that. You can add a little bit of salt, not too much. The salt's got enough naturally, and pepper to taste. Now, this time to get your hands dirty, okay? All you're gonna do is go in there, mash this all up. Now I'm creating, out of this 500 grams, I'm creating 4 burgers, okay? 2 slightly larger ones, and 2 slightly smaller ones for the kids, but you could just do it into 4 equal portions. Okay, so just bring that all together. All the salt does as well is just bring some of the moisture of the meat out. You don't want these too wet. And that's another reason to get the meat out of the fridge and let it come to room temperature, because you don't want the meat too wet. If you do it when it's still cold, you often get quite wet burgers. Okay, so that's your mixture, right? And I always do this. I've got one clean hand, one dirty hand, so I can do stuff with this hand and I can keep this hand. Now, I'm going to do these onto a plate because I don't want to do them onto my wooden chopping board. Okay, now it's time really to get both hands dirty. So I'm going to pull that into about half. Okay, like I said, I'm going to do 2 slightly bigger ones for mum and dad, and 2 slightly smaller ones for the kids. Okay, so once you've got half, that into half again. Now 500 grams is about £1 in old money. And so what we're doing is we're making quarter pounder burgers. All right, that's where the term quarter pounder burgers. All right, so I'm just making balls for now. Size of it's a bit smaller than a tennis ball, that one. These 2 are probably going to be about the size of a tennis ball. Okay, so these are slightly bigger, but yours will all be slightly smaller. If you're using 500 grams, slightly smaller than a tennis ball. All right, that one's slightly bigger, obviously. That one will be mine, I think. And like I said, we're going to right, and there's my 4 burgers. Once I've made them into, yours will be equal, mine aren't, but once you've made them into round balls, all you do, just flatten that ball down. So, and it doesn't have to be, don't worry about it being completely round. Push that down, and they want to be about 1.5 to 2 centimeters thick, okay? Because we want to be able to cook them all the way through. Okay, can you press pause, Dom? Okay, so we've made the burgers. Now to start cooking. So we need about a medium heat on the hob. So my hob goes up to 9. I'm going to pick 5, so just over halfway. Now the reason we needed the coconut oil was for this. I'm just letting my pan heat up, and if you remember in the last video, I said not to let your pan heat up dry without anything in it for too long, because it will wreck your pan. Now, coconut oil I love cooking with coconut oil. One, I love the taste, and 2, it's extremely healthy for you. All sort of nut oils are good, but the great thing about coconut oil is you can cook at relatively high temperatures, and it doesn't break down. With lots of other sort of fats that you cook with, you can't cook at a really high temperature, but with this you can. Not that we're going that high, but what it does, it gives it a really nice brown outside, okay, cooking things up, potatoes and all the rest of it. So we'll just let that come up to heat. We need our pan relatively hot. In fact, let's go right up hot to start with. Get the pan really hot. We sear the outside of our burgers. And then, so there's not a lot of oil in there. I used about a teaspoon. You don't need a lot. You can get coconut oil in spray version. You can use olive oil, you can use sunflower oil, but coconut oil is a good healthy alternative for that, and you can cook it hot. So now that's hot, just turn it down, and it doesn't break down. So I'm going to put because I've got 2 slightly bigger ones. Now if yours are all the same size, you can put them all in at the same time, but because I've got 2 slightly bigger ones, I'm going to put them and cook them slightly longer, because obviously they're a little bit bigger. Now I've turned it down to about halfway, and the reason is, it's very important with turkey. If these were beef burgers, and you could do all this with beef as well, mint coriander might not work, but it's the same sort of principle. With beef burgers, you can have them slightly undercooked. Beef you can eat rare, but with turkey you need to cook it all the way through. So with beef burgers, I'd have this much hotter, and I'd cook them much quicker. Turkey burgers, you've got to cook them slightly slower and get that heat all the way through. And what we want is, we want to be able to feel it, and you'll get, the more you do this, the more you'll get to learn. They must not be pink in the middle. That's really, really important. When you eat these, you must make sure, really, you should cut them in half and have a look in the middle and make sure that they're not pink in the middle. They've got to be cooked all the way through. Turkey, when it's cooked, goes white. You can see at the minute it's pretty pink, but it will go very white as we cook it. Now, a good way of doing this is a good way to cook steak, and a good way to feel how well they're done. If you get your hand and you touch your thumb and your first finger, your pointing finger, your forefinger together, and feel that fleshy part of your hand, when you're cooking steak, when you're cooking beef steak, that would be rare. That feeling, it would feel like that when it's rare. If you touch your middle finger, okay, that fleshy part again, that's medium rare, so you can still feel a bit of movement in there. Then you've got your ring finger, that would be medium, so again, still a little bit of give, but not too much. And then you touch your little finger, and we're going well done there. Now, we want this to feel between medium and well done. Okay, that's how it wants to feel, pretty firm. Right, so that's a good way of feeling. Obviously, we're nowhere near yet, but when you press into it, it should feel kind of similar to that that feeling in that part of your hand. All right. Now, as these are cooking as well, we'll talk about what we're going to eat with them. Great thing about these, turkey is high in protein, it's low in fat, it's a real lean meat, so that's a bonus for us. We've got all those herbs in there, and the spinach to give us all of our vitamins. like I said before, if you wanted to, a really good addition to this, I haven't added it because they're quite expensive to be honest, but if you can, some pine nuts, toast them a little bit to start with in a dry pan, add that to the mixture when you cook them, make sure they're cooled down before you add them. When you're toasting them, they should just be slightly brown on the outside. Add that to the mixture, that's lovely. Again, that's you're going to add more protein to your turkey burgers, and you're also going to add some good omega-3 and omega-6 fats from the seed oils. All right. But with this, I'm cooking in the oven at the minute. I've got some sweet potato I've cut them into wedges. Used coconut oil again. Great for potatoes and sweet potato because it gives them that nice crisp outside. But I've got those cooking in there, so I'm going to have this I'm going to put them in a brioche bun. If you want to go ultra healthy, choose a wholemeal bun, but I'm going to have a brioche bun, sweet potatoes. I'm going to put some in it. I'm going to put some tomato and some avocado in the middle there as well. I might put some cucumbers or something on the outside as well. All right. So I'm going to speed the video up now to get to the end stage. Once you start to brown on the outside, with these ones, because we want to cook them all the way through, we need to make sure that we turn them regularly. With normal burgers, I wouldn't turn them as regularly, but because they're turkey, and I've got to make sure that I cook them all the way through, I need to make sure I turn them regularly. Now, if you look here, the difference between these two, now these have started to cook, it's only cooked on the outside, but the colour difference is very different to these ones here, okay? So these ones are still very pink, these ones are starting to go kind of more white, right? And that colour we want all the way through, and it'll be nowhere near that in the middle at the minute, okay? So I don't want to cook it too much. I am going to turn this up a little bit. Now this is something you've got to practice with, your temperatures. I want to hear that. I don't want it to burn, but I do want to hear it actually doing some work in the pan. So as I say, I'll speed this up a little bit, and then we'll come back to the video in a second, and I'll chat to you then. Okay, so we're cooking nicely. All I've done is I've just turned the heat up a little bit. Now with some turkey, unfortunately, you get a lot of water in it as well. Now what will happen, hopefully in all your science lessons, that water will come out. We're just evaporating that water off now. And that's partly the reason that we put that salt in the first place. We don't want to add too much salt to our food because we get most of it naturally. But what happens is that salt has drawn the water out of the meat. And as I'm cooking it now, that water's coming out of the meat. But like I say, from your science lessons, this is obviously over 100 degrees. So hopefully you all know that water at 100 degrees turns from a liquid form into steam form. So now you can see the steam coming off the meat. Well, I've turned it up a little bit to make sure that's the case. Now I've started to do that a little bit, and that water is reducing down now. Okay, we don't want it to reduce too much. So I've turned it down slightly. All right. Now, like I said to you, this is something that you need to get, maybe need to get your parents to help with, but you're practicing with your temperatures is very important. You don't want to cook it too quick so it burns on the outside and doesn't cook in the middle, but you don't want to cook it too slowly so that you can't reduce and get rid of all that water. Now you'll notice here as well, my hob, although it's an induction hob, the outside of my pan is cooler than the inside of my pan. And so my burgers are cooked on the inside and not so much on the outside. I need to make sure that I'm continually turning them round and making sure that I know that the hottest part of my pan is in the middle. And again, this is something you've got to practice with your own pans and your own cooking. You might have gas, you might have ceramic or electric hob. You just need to make sure, you might have an Arga, that sort of thing. You just need to know your heats and your temperatures. Okay, now you can see that on the outside now I'm getting this nice brown, using that coconut oil gives me that nice brown kind of outside. And you can see this liquid, I want to get rid of that eventually. And with the back of my spatula, I want to push down and try and get rid of, not all of that water, because I want them, I'd like them nice, fairly juicy. I want to get rid of some of that water and allow that water to escape. Don't squish it too much to get rid of all of it, otherwise you just have dry, horrible burgers. But just allow that water to evaporate. Okay, so got to a stage now where I've not got rid of all of the juices in the pan. There's still a few juices in the pan, but I've certainly noticed as I'm pushing down with my spatula that it feels like that ring to little finger, that stodgy part of the hand. So my meat now feels as kind of firm as ring to little finger. All right. Now, again, so that's all those meat juices haven't gone. Now, with meat, it's always very important whenever you're cooking meat. 1, bring it to room temperature before you start cooking it, and 2, rest it at the end. That bit's really, really important. Now, the important bit here is I'm going to leave it resting in the pan. I've turned the heat off, and there's still some of those juices. Now, what will happen? Those juices, they're not evaporating out. Now, what's going to happen if you let it rest, hopefully that meat will suck up all of those juices, okay? And while it's resting, I can prepare the bun and everything else that's going with it. My avocado, my tomato, my cucumber, and I can get all that ready, and my sweet potatoes as well. So, really simple recipe. 500 grams of turkey, a bunch of mint, fresh mint, a bunch of coriander. Added extra for me today was the spinach. You can add pine nuts, things like that if you want. Some Worcester sauce, a little bit of coconut oil in a pan. Once it's all mixed together, made into balls, around tennis ball size, squish them down, put them on a plate, leave them to stand for a little bit, and then start cooking your burgers. And it's very important that with turkey, you cook it all the way through. It cannot be pink in the middle, it must be cooked all the way through. What I'll do at the end now, I'll add some pictures of the finished plate of food. But that, while they're resting, I'm going to crack on with the rest of it. So have a go at that this week. Please send us your videos if you like, or send us your pictures of your final efforts. Give it a go.